Hello, good day, mate, and welcome. I don't know why I did that in Australia. Welcome to this week's episode of the AAA Hole podcast. I am your AAA Hole Death Witch, and with me, as always, is my co-host, Aussie the Aussie. Say it, everybody, Aussie.
G'day, man.
Yeah, now his accent's real. I was doing a fake one, and I don't know why. So gonna do a little shorter podcast this week. Not a whole lot going on in the world of gaming. Everything's everyone's kind of waiting for the holiday season before they make their big announcements and stuff. So we do got some news to talk about. Some of it non-related to gaming, but this is a nerdy podcast, and there's some stuff non-related to gaming that we want to talk about. Right now, there is the possibility of Spider-Man leaving the MCU. Now, I don't think it's a big possibility personally. Sony has denied that they're pulling him out yet. They've disputed that. I'm sure you've seen the videos on YouTube and the headlines, Sony's leaving MCU, or Spider-Man's leaving MCU, basically saying it is going to happen. Sony's disputed that it is going to happen. They've said, no, we're not doing that yet. It's just, we haven't reached a deal with Disney. So it still could very well reach a deal. Apparently Disney wanted a 50-50 split, where before they had nothing from the Spider-Man movies, and then they had just made all their money from Spider-Man off of the toy sales. Now Disney wants half of those movie sales. And, I get that Sony stands to lose a lot of money. They've already had a taste of that big MCU money, the full amount. Because if they made all the money off Far From Home and Homecoming, that's more than they've made off, a lot of their last Spider-Man ventures combined. So after getting a taste of that money, I can understand their willingness for not wanting to give it up. But half of Disney Spider-Man MCU money is still probably going to be more than 100% of Sony Spider-Man money. So I think it's a fair deal. And that is fair. I think it's probably more unfair for Disney. I think it's probably more Disney getting screwed here, because even if they do a 50-50 split, which sounds fair, everybody gets half down the middle, they're not both putting in the same amount into the production. Disney's handling the bulk of the production. Disney's handling the scripts. Disney's handling the bulk of the work and the advertising. Sony just gets to basically give them the character and make 50% of the profits. Now, that's a pretty sweet deal. So I see them eventually taking it. This is all just business tactics. I don't blame them for trying to negotiate and test the waters and see how high can we go, for seeing what they can get away with. But I think in the end, they're just testing the waters here. I mean, and judging by the backlash that they're getting on the internet just from the idea of Spider-Man leaving the MCU, I don't think they want to go down that route. I think they're getting all the information they need to go, okay, we need to make a deal. But I don't blame them for trying to negotiate the best deal possible. That's just business. But in the sake of speculation, because we are nerds and we do like to dream, we're going over all the possibilities of what that could mean if he did leave the MCU. Now I'm pretty sure Disney doesn't want that to happen, as Disney's been prepping him to basically be the successor to Iron Man. Iron Man was his personal mentor. There was spoilers for Far From Home if you haven't seen it yet. Not major spoilers, but I am going to ruin a few plot threads right here, right now. So if you don't want to hear anything about Spider-Man Far From Home, and for some god-awful reason haven't seen it yet, here's your spoiler warning. You get 5 seconds to turn this shit off. Alright? So here we go. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Okay, spoilers incoming. So, they made it very clear that they were trying to make him the next Iron Man. It was a kind of a major plot point in Far From Home. He was, he passed the torch off to Mysterio instead, thinking he was a hero, and of course Mysterio screwed him over. So at the end, he was kind of given that torch back, and they didn't necessarily say he was taking it. He still seemed on the fence about it. So they've left it open to, hey, he still might not do it. He still might basically give the Iron Man tech, which was what he was gifted from Tony as a final present before he died. But he could still give that tech to someone else. He didn't put it on and say, I am the next Iron Man. So he didn't take over the mantle, so to speak. But it very much looked like he was. He seemed very reluctant to want to give that up. He didn't want the responsibility at first, but then after Mysterio screwed him over, he's going to be very reluctant to give it to anybody else. Because the one time he did give it away, yeah, it created a supervillain. So, I mean, they could still remove him from the MCU. They'd have to find... The MCU does need that main focus character for their next phase. They don't have Tony Stark anymore. They don't have Captain America anymore. They don't have the two biggest heavy hitters.
Well, they do have Captain America.
They have to pass the torch
Falcon
for each character.
Will be... Yeah, Falcon's going to be the new captain.
Could be Falcon, or it could be
no, they
Bucky.
They
well, I know that
definitely
they made
thumbed it.
Well, they kind of made it clear in the Avengers Endgame movie, but all the talks about the TV show, the Falcon and the Winter Soldier, seems that's going to be a limited run show. I think it's only like 10 episodes, more like a miniseries.
Yeah, one shot run. Yeah.
Yeah, but apparently one of the major plot points is going to be them, arguing about or trying to decide who takes on the mantle. So, and that's all rumors and speculation, but people seem to think that that's where the rumor going around the internet is that's going to be one of the major plot points of the show, is them deciding, them fighting over the shield amongst themselves and trying to decide who deserves to be the next Captain America. Because Sam did seem reluctant, just like Spider-Man seemed reluctant.
He was reluctant.
Yeah, so they're kind of leaving that open, and Bucky was never asked, but I could see how he would think he would be, so they can make that part of the TV show, and that could change. So by the end of the TV show, it could be Bucky. It could be Sam. But the point is, the Marvel MCU needs... the MCU needs those two big main focus characters. Especially if you're going to try to... I mean, yeah, if Spider-Man leaves the MCU, they could kind of retread water, or they could follow the comics, but the problem with following the comics is I don't think moviegoers... I don't think that'll work as well in the movies, because you'll basically be just redoing what you did already. Because they could set Captain Marvel up as next Iron Man, and they could set, either Sam
she's the leader, but we can't exactly do Civil War 2.
Not
from
exactly
the
the same way, but you could do something
because
similar.
Tony was a big factor in that.
Yeah, which I mean they've replaced characters before. They made the original Civil War work without the big plot point that Spider-Man played in it.
True.
So they could definitely write it and make it work. But then again, do you really want to do that? Do you really want the next phase of your movies to be less experimental and to just be redoing what you already did? Because people are going to call them out on it if they have a new Civil War movie that's the new Iron Man versus the new Captain America, and then you split everybody up again. You're basically doing the same thing you've already done. That's the way moviegoers are going to see it. I know comic book fans know that it's a lot more involved in that, but the comic books also get access to all of the Marvel canon characters, to whereas the MCU doesn't. So it would have to be rewritten in a way that would make it more just like what they've done before. So I don't see them going that route. I see them very much wanting Spider-Man to be that next main focus character, and then either Bucky or Sam being the other one. And I don't think they'll do a civil war between them, but I do see a lot of team-ups between Spider-Man and the next Captain America, whether it be Bucky or Sam. I see him getting more involved and becoming an official Avenger, as he's kind of is. Again, in Far From Home, he was kind of made an Avenger. I mean, I guess it wasn't official, as that, Nick Fury needs to form a new Avengers team and basically get... I do see that being another major plot point for the next phase, is Nick Fury. I guess you could say that's kind of repeating what they did in the first one, but I don't see how you could avoid it. Is Nick Fury...
New Avengers team and the formation of S.W.O.R.D.
Yeah, making basically... Yeah, which will feel to moviegoers like you're just redoing what they did in the first phase of the movies, where he formed S.H.I.E.L.D. and then he formed the Avengers, and now he's basically forming a group again and forming Avengers again. It does feel like you're kind of doing the same thing over, but some of that stuff can't be avoided. I mean, that's just the nature of comics, and the MCU at this point is built on the interconnectedness of all its movies. And if you don't have that central team, that reason for them all to connect, then I feel it'll be a little more flimsy. They do need that foundation to build on. So I do see them forming another Avengers, especially after, Happy basically calling Spider-Man an Avenger in the last movie, and, kind of officially making him an Avenger. So, yeah, I see them doing a new Avengers. and I think Spider-Man and either Bucky or Sam will be kind of the main characters, the leaders, the glue that holds the new group together. Who that new group will be, I don't know. I think after all of the response they got from that one shot in Endgame where, you know, all the female characters line up, everybody was thinking that was going to be the next team they focus on. Everybody was so happy to see the all-female version of the Avengers.
The Femventures.
Yeah, they have a name in the comics. I can't remember what they're called. But yeah, basically them. The internet was thinking that was going to be the next Avengers, and then they announced their plans and showed all their.
That was just a money shot.
Yeah, and then they showed their plans and all their upcoming movies, and none of those characters had an ensemble movie. Most of those characters didn't have their own movie or TV show, so that seems to be just more of an Easter egg than a plot point. But I think after seeing the response that the internet got, Disney may go that route. They may not go that route exactly. I mean, you'll still have Spider-Man and I think Bucky or Sam kind of leading the new Avengers, but I think the new Avengers will be way more female characters than the last one. I don't think it'll be all female, but that they definitely see that people want them to include them. So that's our bit of Sony, MCU non-gaming news here. The other things I want to talk about, and we're just going to kind of go through this real quick because again, this is a half the length podcast, so we're only doing about 30 minutes tonight. I'm just going to hit the highlights. Gamescom 2019 happened, and we got some announcements. Nothing really too shocking. I think one of the bigger ones being Stadia announcing its, revealing more of the lineup of its launch games, which included some pretty big names, but they only released a list of 30 games that will be ready at launch. And of course, there's been just an ensemble of videos on YouTube that I have to debunk about how, this is a shitty launch lineup, and claiming this is all the games that are going to be on Stadia. This isn't all the games that are going to be on Stadia. This is just them releasing information in waves. So all those videos saying Stadia is dead on arrival, its launch lineup is shit, etc., etc. No, if this were all the games that we're launching with, if this was its entire library of games on day one, then yeah, it would be kind of shitty. Only 30 games, and a lot of them are older games. You do have, Tomb Raider, but that's an older game at this point. And then you've got a lot of games that have already been out and people have already played with the.
I saw video footage of the new Avengers game that Square Enix is putting out. We finally got to see gameplay footage.
Oh yeah,
it's clearly from what I know, what was shown at E3. This is clearly the same footage, probably just fixed up and made to look a little bit prettier.
Yeah.
But it's the same sequence, which makes me basically go, okay, now it looks good, it looks fine, great, and why wasn't this shown at E3?
See, I don't know.
Whether it was on the floor, on the actual presentation, or if it was just shown on the floor and allowed to be shown by the media. It should have been shown. Why they kept it under
I got a few
so much secrecy.
I got a few theories on that one. But first I'll go over Stadia's highlights of their launch games. I'm not going to go over all 30, but it is a lot of older games, but they did announce after that, or as part of the presentation, and this is the part that I want to highlight, before you go watching all those videos about this being the launch lineup for Google and it's already set up for failure. The part of the presentation that none of those videos mention is that Google saying that they have partnered with over 100 devs, and they've got more coming, but they didn't want to announce basically everything at one time. They're kind of doing it in waves, so they're leaving out that part. They're cherry picking that part out. So this is very clear that this isn't going to be everything. These are just kind of a lot of the heavy hitters was what they were announcing. You got stuff like Cyberpunk 2077 is coming to it, Baldur's Gate 3. You know, there's some big name games coming. Doom Eternal, etc., etc.
Borderlands and the Avengers game is coming to it as well, aren't they?
Yeah, Borderlands 3 and the new Avengers, as you mentioned, is also coming. So they basically just used this brief presentation at Gamescom to assure people that, yeah, the big hitters that you want are coming, and there's more to be announced later, as they are still working. They basically said that we are still working with hundreds of developers, over 100, and I'm guessing that not a lot of those deals probably aren't set in stone yet, but they're still working with them. And of course, you can't announce stuff that hasn't happened yet. But we've still got a lot of time between here in November, and there's still plenty of time for them to get more devs on board that may not be, So I see this as a more to come, but they didn't want to, be completely radio silent at Gamescom, so they had to give you a little something. Let's see, blah, 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 blah. I'm kind of going over it. So we got Death Stranding for gameplay for Death Stranding. Nintendo at Gamescom just kind of showcased a bunch of indies. So nothing really new from Nintendo there, other than a ton of indies. I mean, a lot of them are fun. They're good indies, but they are stuff you've probably already played, such as Super Hotline Miami. It's stuff it's a lot of stuff you've already played. Crossplay or cross save for now. This isn't really Gamescom news, but I'm just going to go over a couple of the highlights news before we get into the Avengers game. For those of you who do play Destiny, because we are doing a quick podcast, I'm trying to keep bullet points here. So for those of you who do play Destiny has already put up and live its Steam account linking, so you can go ahead and do that today, right now, and tomorrow, or by the time you hear this podcast, it'll be the day you're listening to it if you're not watching it live. You can go ahead and set up crossplay and start using start using cross save and transfer your character onto the cloud so that you can play the same character on PlayStation, Xbox One, or PC. So that will be live by the time you listen to this podcast if you're not watching it live. Some caveats to it to remember, though, is that until Shadowkeep comes out in October, you will be kind of restricted with your cross-save character. So basically, the cross-save character will only have access to the DLC you've purchased on the system you're using it on. So if you have a character on PC with all the DLC, and then you go to play that same character on PS4, and all you have, like me, is the version of Destiny 2 they gave away, the base game they gave away as part of a PlayStation Plus deal, then you'll only have access to the base game content. Any powerful engrams you earn, even base engram, powerful engrams, anything like that you earn with that character on the console that doesn't have the DLC, that doesn't have Forsaken, will not drop at max light level. So if you got a 750 character playing base game content on PS4 and you don't have all that content on PS4, you've only got the base game, then your powerful engrams will drop at the base game level cap of 380. And you can still infuse it and whatnot afterward, but you won't be able to get drops at a level higher than the amount of content you own has. So that's kind of the caveat there. Is you can still, there's still some merit for crossplay. You can still, or cross save. Like, I'm still going to use it to, to knock out bounties and to farm and do shit like that. But until October, when Shadowkeep launches, you are going to be somewhat restricted with your character on other platforms, unless you own Forsaken on both platforms you're trying to play on. So something to keep in mind there. I am going to be testing it out on stream probably tomorrow to see. I'll be playing off my PS4 instead of on PC to see what I do and don't have access to, and exactly how useful my character will be on a restricted version of the game. Well, so that's just something to take note of there. Let's see, Samurai Showdown, Mortal Kombat 11, also coming to Google Stadia, blah blah blah, and on the opening night, Witcher 3 coming to Switch, Death Stranding got gameplay. Call of Duty Modern Warfare free PS4 alpha test is happening this week. So if you have a PS4, you can get in on that. Co-creator of Halo showing off a team-based multiplayer game. Cabal Space Program 2 announced.
Nice.
Yeah. Gameplay footage for the next Need for Speed game was revealed. Gears 5 has a campaign trailer, so if you wanted to see what the campaign might be like for Gears 5, you can check that out and all this. That's part of the Gamescom. So, like I said, not a whole lot there. The meat and potatoes of it was, the big highlights are more from Xbox and Stadia. Xbox announcing its and the big one from Sony is Sony purchasing Insomniac Games. So all Insomniac games from here on out will be Sony exclusive, which kind of sucks. I mean, they did so well with Spider-Man as an exclusive for PS4 that Sony bought the company. But Insomniac does make good games. It just does kind of suck that they're going to be exclusive, but exclusives are basically, what consoles and platforms have to get people to come to them. They're their selling point, so they're always going to happen.
Speaking about exclusives, did you hear about the latest thing from Epic? That apparently a number of devs have come out and said that they would have liked to have put their game on Epic. However, Epic told them that it was either exclusive or nothing.
Yeah, they're kind of holding them hostage, basically. And they're only doing it to smaller devs too. That's the shittier part of it. AAA devs don't seem to have a problem releasing their game on other platforms as well as the Epic's game store, but smaller devs, if they want, and it's indie devs mainly, because indie devs, as we know, it's damn near impossible for them to be seen on Steam at this point. So of course indie devs want to get in the Epic Game Store, and they approached Epic and they want it in, and Epic's like, sure, we'll let you in, but you can only be with us.
You can only get in if an exclusive.
Yeah, so they offer them some good deals, but
or with us or nothing.
Yeah, but they offered those devs some good deals. I mean, honestly, it would have been a better deal than being on Steam. I can see the conflict as a developer. I can see why a number of them
had basically said that no, we've promised,
which is commendable. They've already promised
release on Steam as well.
Yeah, which is commendable because they've promised.
We're holding to that.
Yeah, and that's commendable. That's what you should do. But what I'm saying is I can see how that's a hard deal to turn down for them. And they're basically being put in a spot where they have to choose between making their fans mad or making more money.
Oh yeah, and I'm not putting any of this on the deck.
I'm not at all.
Epic.
I don't think
scummy by Epic.
Yeah, it's a scummy move. I wouldn't blame a developer either way. I mean, it would be kind of a shitty thing for a dev that got kick-started and already promised its backers Steam keys. But I mean, that's an easy thing to avoid. For anyone who's thinking of starting a Kickstarter project, or any devs who might listen to this and want to do a Kickstarter project, that's an easy thing to avoid in the future. If you want to maximize your profits, you might still make your players a little unhappy, but if you put this in your Kickstarter campaign, just a little fine print at the bottom that says, availability subject to change without notice, then you're in the clear. You gave them a warning. And then if you're approached by Epic or somebody to do an exclusive deal that would make you a lot of money and would help keep your studio alive, I mean, I wouldn't blame a small dev for taking it, because that money could be the difference of, do we have jobs or not? For a bigger studio, it's just extra profits. For a studio that, that's working paycheck to paycheck, and the success of their next game could make or break them, then I wouldn't blame them at all for reaching for the most amount of money possible in their game, even if you make some people mad in the process. because
But really, Epic should not be
Epic shouldn't be doing that.
putting
No, I
them
agree.
in this position.
I agree. They should be
Putting
able
them in
to.
a position that
They should be able to still publish where they want because they are smaller companies and they need the revenue from everywhere they can get it. But like I said, I can understand why they would take it, because if your choices are make a buttload of money on day one from signing an exclusive deal, because Epic does pay them for the exclusive rights, so they get money up front no matter what, and then they get a 30% split and they get a pretty good deal afterward. If their choices are take that deal and piss off our players, or make our players happy and maybe have no company later, well, it does you no good to make all your fans happy if you no longer have a company to provide content for those fans. It's counterproductive. So it's a tough spot to be in as a developer, and Epic definitely shouldn't be putting them in that spot. It's a shitty tactic. I'm gonna agree with you 100%. It's a shitty move, especially
and specifically because Epic's been saying, "Oh, we're doing this for the gamers. We're doing this
and
for
they're kind
the
of
developers."
they're kind of going against things
It's like,
they've already
no,
said.
you're not.
Yeah, they're kind of going against things they've already said, but I would be less mad at Epic, and I'd be willing to defend them if this were just a rule they had, and it was a blanket rule for all, companies. But the fact that they're selectively applying this rule to smaller developers and not larger ones, it's kind of a shitty deal.
Well, they're applying it to anyone that they can get away with it.
Yeah, and that's
because they're not going to be able to get away with it.
Yeah, it's still not
the largest.
It's still not fair doing it that way. If it were just, hey, that's just how we operate and no one's exempt from this, then I'd be like, well, that's just how they operate. If you approach them, you can't be surprised if they want to do this to you, because they do that to everybody. But they don't do that to everybody. So if you approach them, it's a gamble. Will they do it to me or will they not? And it's that uncertainty that makes it scummy and a little shady. As long as we're talking about companies pissing people off in controversies, another little bit of gaming news before we wrap up this podcast is Apex Legends developers flat out talking shit to its gamers. Now look,
oh yes, I've heard this.
I'm not 100% blaming the Respawn developers for the decisions that led to them having their little moment. Like I'm trying to play devil's advocate here and to understand where they're coming from, and I kind of see where they're coming from. All those financial decisions, the price. So basically, if I can just sum it up real quick, they ran an event in the game that offered an exclusive item if you had all of the other items as part of the event. So you work your way through the event and earn items, or purchase those items. I think you get the first 2 you can earn in game for free, but everything after that had to be purchased. And you have to purchase them through loot boxes, so then it's already a gamble. The loot boxes are insanely priced at $7 a pop. But people did the math, and they were like, if you got the item you wanted out of every loot box, the minimum amount of money you'd have to pay to get this exclusive item that's part of this limited time event. So you have to buy enough loot boxes to get all 7 of the items first, and then after you get all 7 of those items, and you have a full set of gear for your character, then you can get the exclusive item as part of the event, the exclusive cosmetic item. But it's not like you just get it because you've already purchased a full set of armor. You unlock the ability to purchase it, and that one item is $35. So the minimum amount of money you'd have to pay to get that one item as part of this event, to get the event exclusive item, would
This is for the axe, isn't it?
Yeah, for the axe. To get that event exclusive axe, the minimum amount of money you'd have to pay in Apex Legends would be around $150, $160.
No, it's around 175 from what I recall.
Well, I've read several different ones. I think some of them are doing Canada prices, yeah. But it's well over what any cosmetic item should be. The loot boxes are overpriced, the cosmetic items are overpriced, and it's real shitty that after spending all that money and collecting all that gear, you didn't just unlock the axe, you unlocked an ability to purchase something, and that alone is scummy. But I don't so much blame the devs for that, because I know those decisions are coming from EA, so their hands are more or less tied there. and I kind of get their frustration. I just think that they handled that frustration poorly, because basically they did what their overlords said they had to do. They put it in the game, even though they probably didn't want to. And of course they got attacked. And I get the frustration. You know that this is going to be bad, but you have to do it anyway. You put it in the game even though you don't want to, and then you release it to the public and you brace for impact, because no matter how much you fight, EA is going to be EA, and they're going to still make you do that shit. Even if you tell them it's a bad idea, EA's still going to make you do it anyway. So then they release it to the public, and of course they brace for impact, and I get the frustration. You spend all that time, you know, basically being right and telling EA this isn't a good idea, and then, you know, you spend all that time making all this stuff and doing it, and as a dev, you're kind of stuck between a rock and a hard place, where you can't get EA to work with you, you can't run the game you want to run it, and then you can't get the community to give you a break, because you release something you know is going to be shitty, and you basically tell them, you know, you have to act enthusiastic about it, knowing you're going to get yelled at, and no one wants that. No one wants to release something that they know is going to get them just yelled at. That's going to just get them hate. And some of the hate they got, like, again, I'm trying to play devil's advocate and understand their frustration here. A lot of the hate mail they got was death threats. I think some of the devs' home addresses were found, and people had, you know, SWAT in their houses and shit like that. So there's a lot of shitty people on the internet, but you gotta let that shit go. So basically, they called their fans freeloaders.
Yeah, I was just about to bring that up.
Yeah, just basically lashed out at all of the
direct quote from one of the posts. The amount of people who spend is crazy low. Most of your are freeloaders, and change in price doesn't move the needle.
Yeah.
When I read that, I had to literally cringe.
Yeah, I cringed a little bit too. I mean, but he has a point. It's just
he
went about the wrong way of expressing that point. So basically, what he did was he grouped all the free players into this group, even the good ones. I mean, you've got your trolls and you've got your people who do throw that hate at you, but you also had your fans, and some of those fans were free players who were defending you. And then you basically lumped the good with the bad together and said, you don't fucking matter to us. And that's a bad way to explain it. What they should have done is they should have framed it, because I get it, saying that, you know, oh yeah, we got, 2 million players, but only 1% of y'all actually spend money. So, help us work with you. Or that's what they should have done, is frame it as we'd like to make everybody happy, and of course we want everyone to spend, but tell us how we can do this. How can we get more of you to spend money in the game so that we don't have to charge these large prices? They could have framed it as, we feel we need to charge these large prices because such a small percentage of people actually spend money, we wouldn't be able to make ends meet the other way. You could also put value on those free players, because free players in a free-to-play game aren't freeloaders. They're not some guy squatting in your apartment, not paying his share of the rent and just taking up space. They do serve a purpose. Free players add to the matchmaking. They add to the player base. Without all those free players, all those paying players would have to spend 20 minutes waiting in matchmaking for a match. And they wouldn't have people to play against. They wouldn't have people to show off those cosmetic items to, so then they wouldn't buy those cosmetic items. They serve a purpose. And by calling them freeloaders and dismissing them, you're going to lose some players, because they're going to be insulted and they're going to feel as if their time in the game is meaningless. So why play it? And free players should play it. If you're never going to spend a dime, you should still play it, because you do serve that purpose of making matchmaking faster, of giving the paying players something to play against, and also free promotion for the game, because you're going to be telling people you're playing it. Some of those free players stream. A lot of those free players tweet about it and like to show off their victories when they get one. So all those factor in, and by calling them freeloaders, you dismiss all of that. Now, the CEO did come out and apologize, but a lot of people say it's not good enough, and I kind of see where they're coming from. They're mad that the apology came from a CEO, and it felt more like a public statement than an apology, when the apology they feel should have came from the devs themselves, and the devs have yet to apologize personally. But, I mean, that could have just been a business decision. It may not be that those devs don't want to apologize. It may be that after sticking their foot in their mouth on social media, they were told to stay the fuck off social media from here on out, and the CEO just said, "I'll handle it." So it could have just been a business move. They're making poor business decisions left and right. Is the bottom line to this. But we'll have to wait and see the kind of impacts it has on Apex's numbers, because they were a lot bigger and they're getting smaller, and decisions like this aren't going to help them keep those players, or aren't going to help them get those players back. They had a big boom in the beginning, and they were off to a good start, and they just kind of started losing momentum there. So the last little bit of news before we end this thing is, I think we're ready to put a nail in Anthem's coffin. I think we're ready to put that final nail in there, as it's one of its leads is leaving. The design lead is leaving the team. And
something like that.
Yeah, they had announced 3 chapters to the story. So basically, 3 big events including this first one. And basically they got to the first event, which is Cataclysm. The Cataclysm launched, and it launched late. And apparently it did not live up to any of the expectations it set, or most of the expectations. And it was so poorly received and disappointed so many people that the design lead is leaving the team, and people are wondering, are they going to continue what they promised? Because I guess they don't have to. They didn't sell DLC that far out, but they did release a roadmap when they launched Anthem to ensure people that it would get updates, and people are wondering if they'll actually continue that roadmap and try to finish those other 2 chapters, or if this is the This is the sign that the end is near, and that it'll eventually just fall apart, and people are just counting down the days until they get that announcement from EA that, support for Anthem has been dropped. So, kind of makes you wonder. I don't think EA would shut down the servers for Anthem. They'd let people keep playing, but I think it would, if they did anything, it would be if they really are going to give up on it. I don't think they'd shut it down. They stand to get in a little too much trouble because of all those people who paid money for something that they barely last a year, and then they can't play anymore again. So you'd have people demanding refunds and shit like that. So I don't see them shutting the game down. I do see them still letting you play the game and leaving the servers up, but they'll make an announcement that they're no longer developing for the game. So what you're playing now is it, but you're not entitled to a refund because we're not taking the game away from you. We're just not going to work on it anymore. You can keep playing it in its current state as long as you want, but you'll be playing it in its current state. It'll never be better than this. So, it's Anthem's gonna go down in history as just a sad tale, and hopefully a lesson learned for the industry. The amount of hype behind it before it launched, and the whole story of its development, the mishandling of its launch, the poor quality of the PC port, and the long loading times, and just the handling of its content afterwards. The way that they had some mishaps on social media like Apex did, where they attacked their player base as well, and then fixing the game based on what they wanted and not what the players wanted, which only made shit worse. Basically saying the one fun part of the game, the drop rate of the guns, I remember them saying that was a mistake. And that was a bug, and then they fixed it, so then the drop rates got worse and people hated the game more. They said it was funner when it was broken. So it's just been one mishap after another, and I think it'll go down in history as a kind of a lesson learned, hopefully, because this will become the shining example of how not to do a live service game. This will be the example of a live service game making all the mistakes you could possibly make at one time. Just failing in a spectacular fashion. So I'm hoping this will, be a lesson for the industry, and that if we're gonna keep getting these live service games, that now there'll be standards set for what makes a good one, and we'll get some good quality stuff. because even games like Destiny didn't start as a great live service game. You know, it took them a few years, but I think they're finally getting to where they found their footing, and they're going to establish that live service feeling of a game. And I'm specifically talking about AAA live service games. I mean, there's been some indie ones who've done it right since day one, or have turned their games around and fixed it. Warframe had a rough start, turned it around and fixed it. And then you've got games like Path of Exile who've just nailed that live service model to keep people playing and are just on point with it. So indie devs seem to have a little better time with it than AAA games. AAA games seem to have trouble finding that balance between making a good live service where players want to come back and play every day indefinitely, and monetization that doesn't scare them away. And that's a hard balance to find. So, you know, there's a lot that goes into it, especially if you're going to be a free-to-play live service game, which is where Destiny's going in November. So, you know, a lot to work out there.
A lot of the live service ones should be free-to-play.
I
Because
agree.
they put in all those microtransactions to keep it going, so...
Anthem, I feel, will serve as a prime example of that. I think Anthem would have done a lot better if it were free. I feel like people would be a lot more forgiving to a lot of Anthem's problems it had, a lot more forgiving to its prices on cosmetics. Yeah, and its handling as a whole. I feel people would have been more forgiving and willing to give it a chance. Its player base wouldn't have abandoned it, and it would have had more support and probably more money had it been free. Because, yeah, they got that big influx of money on day one from people who actually paid $60 and bought the game. But I feel if they'd have been free, they'd have had a larger player base over time, and over time would have eventually made more money. Because, you know, you might not spend $60 on a game on day one, but, you know, if they get the microtransactions right, even if the game's kind of broken and it's a work in progress, there's still those people who are, you know, well, I've had fun playing it for free. I'll give it 5, 10, you know, maybe even 15 or 20 bucks. You know, there's some people who would do it. And I feel like all those numbers would have added up to more than the sales numbers. Because right now, the only profit they've really had from the game has been the sales. And with all the headlines and all the mistakes they've made, those sales just continue to drop and drop and drop and drop to the point that no one's buying this game anymore. And the only way you'd get new players in is if it were free. So hopefully it'll set that standard to either how you monetize a paid game, or how games as a service need to be free games. Because right now all the successful ones are free for the most part. I mean, even Destiny's, might as well throw that in the list of free games, because come November it's going to be a free one. All the really successful ones are basically free. Warframe, Destiny, Path of Exile. You know, games like that. I can't really think off the top of my head of another live service game that's paid that's doing really well right now. Monster Hunter, maybe?
Maybe.
Yeah, I mean, if I'm struggling to think of one off the top of my head, then that shows you how few there are. So I'm sure
probably there's only one that could ever really come to mind, and that would be World of Warcraft.
Well, I'm specifically excluding MMOs, because I think MMOs are their own thing. I don't think people consider them live service games. MMOs existed before the live service game craze, so they kind of get their own category. Now I'm thinking more a game that could very well have worked as a single player game, but you added an in-game to it that made it a service. When it, you know, games that probably would work fine without being a service, and World of Warcraft wouldn't work fine without being a service, but Destiny would work fine without being a live service. You know, you've got enough DLC and story content there, and all you really need then are the multiplayer modes, and you could have kept the live service part out of it. So it still could have worked. You know, I think that they've finally found that sweet spot where they've nailed how to do the live service portion of it, and the portion of it that makes those people who don't want to play all the live service stuff happy too, to make it worth their investment. So I think they've found a pretty decent balance at this point, but I think for a live service game to really work, it should be free. That seems to be the lesson we're learning here with Anthem. So, and and Fallout 76. That's just another I think that one would be
I
a lot
don't
better.
think that comes under success.
No. I'm saying that's another shining example of one I feel would be doing a lot better right now if it were free. Fallout 76 should be free. It would be doing a lot better if it were free. Which we should see. I should probably check in on those numbers because I forgot one of the other headlines here is Fallout 76 getting a raid, getting its first raid. So it'd be fun to see. I need to look up the numbers on that for the next one to find out how well it's doing based on its game modes. You know, are people coming back for the raid? And are they still doing the live service?
You just want to wrap up. I just got to check something.
Oh, okay, yeah, I'm doing the wrap up now. Is it? Are most of the people playing it now? Are they playing for the raid? Are they playing for the content that they originally designed the game for? Or are people logging into Fallout 76 for the Battle Royale mode they tacked on? Like, I'd be very curious to see what's doing better. Last couple of bits of gaming news, and I realize this is actually getting as long as a real podcast. I need to start wrapping this up. Speaking of Path of Exile, it's going to introduce a tower defense game mode with its next update, so it's getting its own little tacked on. Speaking of tacked on game modes that weren't part of the original game, it's getting its own one, so it'll be interesting to see how that works. Tower defense mode seems kind of like a weird choice. And GameStop showing the first signs of putting nails in its coffin. Speaking of nails in coffins, with it, the first signs of it's officially going down that path. Right now, everything's been stock numbers, but this time it's affected real people as GameStop has laid off over 100 employees, including quite a few employees who work for their magazine, Game Informer. So, if I have to predict the next stops for that company, Game Informer magazine will probably be discontinued first, but that's going to affect, to some degree, the people who are willing to pay that subscription price for their pro service that gives you a subscription to that magazine and a discount at their stores. And I think that'll be where the snowball starts rolling, and it'll all be downhill from there. They're gonna go the way of Toys R Us and Radio Shack and Blockbuster Video, just closing those doors. Maybe they'll stay online. Maybe they won't go under completely. Maybe they'll find a way to stay afloat as an online retailer only. Maybe they'll keep all their warehouses open. They'll just warehouse all their inventory and just turn into an online retailer, which they're going to have to do some serious restructuring to make that work, but I think that's their only chance of success, because if you go online only, then you have to convince people why they should visit your website to buy video games instead of just going to Amazon. So, yeah, I think we're on the verge of not having a GameStop anymore, which I know a lot of people would be happy about. They have been a shitty company. They have ripped off a lot of people in terms of trade-ins and stuff, but they're not all bad. They've also employed a lot of good people, so even them going under, like, I don't want to cheer for them going under, because a lot of good people will lose jobs, and a lot of smaller towns and stuff will lose a community, a place where gamers would gather and meet other gamers and talk about games. You know, there's not a lot of places where you can do that in person anymore. So, yeah, it's not all good news that they're going under, but it's not at all surprising either. So that wraps up this week's episode of the podcast. I realize I've dragged on a little longer than I wanted to, but it's still a little shorter episode. So for those of you who did put me in your ear, take me on your morning jog, commute to work, your shit in the bathroom, whatever it is you were doing, thank you for taking me with you there. And I'm hoping these little shorter format ones are better. Leave me some feedback. You can at me on Twitter at Deathwitch. You can email me, deathwitch@gmail.com. You can always join in the stream and post your comments live during the live recordings of these podcasts. And, give me the feedback. Let me know how I'm doing. Let me know. Do you prefer shorter podcasts where I go through the bullet points and it's just rapid fire like this? Or do you prefer the more long-form discussion stuff?
Longer,
that we've done?
in-depth.
Yeah, where we discuss it more and we get your opinions and we read them all live during the podcast? Or do you prefer me just, recording these off stream and not doing them live and just getting my thoughts of me ranting for an hour, 30 minutes to an hour? What works best for you? Where are my strengths? Where are my weaknesses? Feel free to leave me that feedback. For now, though, I'm going to let you guys get on with your day, and I'm going to get on with my stream. So thank you for listening, and I'll see you wonderful witches next week. This is the AAA Hole game. The AAA, I almost called myself an asshole. The AAA Hole signing off. Maybe I picked a bad name. Thanks for listening. Bye, everybody.